Good evening. Welcome to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen meeting scheduled for Monday, March the 12th. We welcome everyone that's here in attendance this evening, also those that are streaming or watching at home or streaming on the internet. Just a few highlights about this evening's meeting. We have a relatively short agenda. This evening we will have a public hearing on a rezoning question as well. The public hearing, you'll be allowed to come forth and speak at that time. We also have a portion of our agenda known as Citizens to be Heard. If you'd like to speak to the board, you can fill out a sheet that's out in People Street, bring it to our city clerk, and we will acknowledge you on that particular item. The public hearing, if you're going to speak on the public hearing, you do not have to fill out a sheet. You'll just be called during that time and to come forward and state your name and address for the record. This evening, our invocation will be led by Reynold Douglas. Our Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Alderman Forrest Owens. Please rise.
Please join me in a word of prayer. Gracious, eternal God, our Father, again, come tell you thank you for the many blessings that you put upon us. We ask that you would be a part of this meeting. Bless the words, the decisions that happen in this council tonight. We say a special prayer for our work family and for every home that is represented here. As always, in our efforts, we strive to give you the praise and glory. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. This evening, I'd also like to recognize and acknowledge that Josh Lawhead will be serving as our city attorney this evening. David Harris is out of town. Also this evening, we have in attendance Janie Day, our president of our Germantown Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for being here, Janie. Eric Newsom, the executive director of our Germantown Community Theater, is here as well. Welcome indeed. And Lisa Parker just walked in, our school board, former school board chair and current school board member. Thank you for being in attendance this evening as well. During executive session, we talked about the agenda and went over the consent agenda. At this time, we can set the agenda. There were no modifications or additions to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented and offered to the public?
Move to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson? Yes. Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
The agenda has been set for this evening. Takes us to item 5, approval of the February 26, 2018 minutes. Again, in executive session. The board meets in executive session prior to each regular board meeting at 5:30 and goes over the agenda in detail. At that time, there were no modifications or corrections to the minutes. Are there any at this time? Is there a motion to accept the minutes as presented to the public?
Move to approve.
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
The minutes have been approved from the February 26th meeting. Brings us to item 6 on the agenda, special recognition. This evening, the REACH 3-star recognition will be brought forward by our Parks Director, Pam Beasley.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. It is with great pleasure tonight that I extend a special recognition to our REACH After School program. When our city formed our new school district in 2014, the new leadership of the district reached out to the Parks and Recreation Department seeking services for students during the after-school hours. The Parks and Recreation Department developed a comprehensive educational program called REACH, which stands for Recreation, Education, Arts, Community, and Health. In 2016, we added those care services before school as well and operate this program in all 3 of the elementary schools in our district. Also in 2016, all 3 sites were licensed by the Tennessee Department of Human Services, known as DHS, to ensure safety standards and quality care for all participants. As a result, these programs are evaluated annually by DHS using a report card system to make certain that all the sites are adhering to the rules and regulations set forth by the agency. DHS has a star quality recognition program available. This program is voluntary and is eligible to agencies for a 1-year period. Programs can receive a rating up to 3 stars and are graded on the director qualifications, the professional development, parent and family involvement, student ratio and group size, staff compensation, and the program assessment. The annual report card sets the baseline for the star level that can be achieved. In December of 2017, our department received word from DHS that all 3 of our school sites had received the 3-star quality rating from their review process. This is the highest rating that can be achieved by any licensed program and only awarded to those programs going above and beyond in its overall service delivery. Today, REACH has over 500 registered participants, and we employ over 20 part-time employees and 2 full-time dedicated staff. Tonight, the department would like to recognize our REACH staff for this achievement and for their ongoing commitment to service excellence every day and for providing top quality care to our children of the Germantown Municipal School District. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor tonight to have Sarah Blackwell, our REACH manager, here with us tonight. Sarah has dedicated 100% of her work effort to ensuring that the REACH program is not only successful, but is also a point of pride for our community and the children and families that she and her staff serve. So, Sarah, we would like to extend a heartfelt thank you for all that you do.
Any comments or questions for staff? Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Beasley, Sarah, thank you so much. 2 years in existence, and we have reached the highest level that can be awarded by DHS. That is not insignificant, and remembering all of us here that were here in 2014 when we had our new school district, and as exciting as that was to go from working with 28 parks at the time to taking on a program that is caring for children. It is a monumental task. And so, Sarah, I've worked with you before and look forward to doing it again. And again, Pam, thank you for the leadership there. Appreciate it.
Alderman Owens.
Thank you, Mayor. I can't say much beyond what Vice Mayor said, but I will say thank you to Sarah and to you, Pam. This is a great honor. I can speak firsthand. My children have been within the REACH program, and the quality and care that you guys have exhibited to those kids within our school district is unsurpassed. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Alderman Barzizza.
Thank you, Mayor. I too congratulate you, and I just wish we had it back years ago. But you're doing a great service for the parents of our community. Thank you again.
Thank you, everyone. Mayor, I would say if I could issue Sarah a uniform, it would be a Superwoman cape.
We agree completely, and from a fiscal standpoint, it's a special fund as well, so it pays for itself. Let's not forget that. Plus, it gives great service to our school-age children, and that's very important for our community. So thank you again. One more round of applause. Thank you. Brings us to item number 7 on the agenda, Alderman Liaison Reports. We go from position 1 through position 5. Alderman Barzizza.
Thank you, Mayor. The Historic Commission met on February 23rd and discussed quite a few items. The cleanup of the McVeigh Road Cemetery, exterior lights at the train depot, refurbishing the old Germantown markers, plans for the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I, which will be the week before November 11th, and discussion that was made in conjunction in regards to the movement of the caboose to near the depot area. Also, I would like to encourage you to go to the Facebook page, Friends of the Germantown Depot, because it's a really, really nice page. EDC met on March the 1st. We met at the Epicenter in the Care For. Mr. Ross reported on the commercial nodes or districts. Of special note, Campbell's Clinic will be breaking ground in May or in June. Ms. Lemons of the Epicenter gave a very good presentation of their activities and gave a brief history of the program, which began in Bioworks in Memphis. I will say that considering the fact that the lady had only been with Epicenter for just a short while, she was very well educated on what Bioworks is doing. This particular program is a nonprofit organization leading to the community-wide strategic initiative to help entrepreneurs conceive, launch, and scale businesses in the Memphis region. Also, I'd like to report on the Chamber. The Health and Wellness Expo will be April 26th at the Great Hall Conference Center. Methodist Lebanon Germantown is the presenting sponsor. The MC will be A.D. Davis of the Germantown Athletic Club. As of last week, there were 12 booths still available at $350. The Chamber Alliance Shelby County Mayoral Candidates Forum at Ducks Unlimited is going to be on April the 5th for the candidates who are running for Shelby County Mayor. The chairman is Harold Bird. He's arranging the forum and the moderator, and is moderator. The Taste of the Town is scheduled for August 25th at the Great Hall and Conference Center. This year's live auction recipient will be the Kiwanis Club of Germantown, their scholarship fund. A portion of the live auction proceeds will go to that scholarship fund for Germantown students. And lastly, on the Germantown Golf Tournament, partnering with Susan B. Coleman Memphis, it will be June the 11th, 2018 at Wendike Country Club. It will be $175 per player or $700 per team. The Senior Commission will meet on Thursday, March 15th. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman. Vice Mayor?
Mayor, the Education Commission is preparing for the Education Celebration, which will be held on Thursday, April 26th in City Hall, along in these chambers as well as People Street. We invite the community to be our guest as education is celebrated in Germantown with the awarding of the Student New Teacher and Marjorie Reapy Teacher of the Year Awards. The beautification reports another successful Arbor Day, which was held on March 2nd. Over 600 free dogwood trees were given away, and all the fruit trees were sold. The commission didn't hold a business meeting this month in order to focus their efforts along with the tree board for the Arbor Day event, but we'll be meeting again Monday, April 2nd. The Board of Zoning Appeals meets in these chambers tomorrow evening. Both the Library Board and the Neighborhood Preservation Commission will be meeting next week.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Alderman Massey.
To be brief, the Public Safety Education Commission met. We are still looking for volunteers to help us out with Safety City. So if you have a teenager, if you yourself can volunteer to help us with that, would greatly appreciate it. The Environmental Commission met. I don't really have any business to report, so thank you. That's it, Mayor.
Thank you. Alderman Owens?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. The Planning Commission met this past month and reviewed the Campbell Clinic site plan, final site plan approval for the next building, as well as the Avenida Senior Living site plan. Also, the Design Review Commission met and reviewed the Campbell Clinic signage, buildings, site plan, and landscaping, as well as signage for Rise Biscuits, Donuts, and Righteous Chicken, which is now open in Saddle Creek if you haven't had an opportunity to go.
And hard to get into, from what I
a little bit difficult to get into. That's right, Mayor. That's my report.
Thank you. Alderman Yonda.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I had two commissions, Audit Commission. We had a clean bill of health from our CPA firm, Watkins Juberall. Also had the Retirement and Post Benefits Commission. Great news. We had a wonderful year as far as returns go, until January happened, I guess. But the way we've got it set up, we didn't lose as much as we gained. So we're in great shape in those two funds also. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman. And quickly, just from the Mayor's office, a few highlights. I'd like to acknowledge Alexa Robinson, our grant manager, produced a $19,304 grant from TDEC for education and outreach for recycling. So please pass our thanks on to Alexa. Also, the Knights of Columbus at OLPH Church brought forth their Fireman and Policeman of the Year. This year, the driver paramedic was Greg Brewer, and Detective Gamble from the Police Department were the recipients of those awards. Also, as reported in Germantown up front on Friday, the city had a tremendous holiday season and broke records for sales tax collection. So thank you, residents, for shopping and dining locally, and please keep that up as well. And then something that on many occasions our employees get special recognition and letters of commendation from our residents. And I'd like to just take a moment to read something that's very heartfelt, and I'll just read it to you. This is from our Fire Marshal, Jody Dwyer. The fire department responded to a residential structure fire Tuesday night at 11:41. The fire caused a significant amount of damage to the house. A single mother with 2 young children was renting the home. Alderman Mary Ann Gibson arrived at the scene shortly after the first engine company. Alderman Gibson never left the mother's side, providing an incredible amount of emotional support for her and the children. After learning the mother moved in only 2 months prior to the fire and had not secured renter's insurance, Alderman Gibson would not rest until she assured the family had a place to stay, even offering her own home, and that a number of personal items were retrieved from the damaged house. Mrs. Gibson did not leave the scene until the family departed at approximately 3 a.m. The amount of compassion and support shown by Mrs. Gibson was remarkable to witness. This is a great example of why Germantown is truly a community and not just a city. Respectfully, Jody Dwyer, Fire Marshal. Thank you, Alderman Gibson. And Vice Mayor, I apologize because I did not ask you, because I knew you would have said don't read that. So that brings us to the next item on the agenda, citizens to be heard. We have one citizen coming forward this evening. Before I announce that citizen, let me read the guidelines for citizens to be heard. Citizens to be heard is designed to gain input from the public and not for immediate responses by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. The intent of the agenda item is to provide the public a platform to be thoughtfully heard and not a forum for dialogue, discussion, or verbal exchange with the board. While the board cannot assure each speaker of a specific or individualized future response, the board will consider the public comments and any supporting materials provided by the speaker. Public comments should be limited to 3 minutes per resident. Speakers are asked to refrain from using names of personnel or names of persons connected with the city, particularly when lodging a complaint. Speakers will not be permitted to engage in gossip, hearsay, make defamatory comments, or use abusive or vulgar language. Don Lossing, please come forward and state your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to address the board.
My name is Don Lossing. I live at 1475 Cordova Road. I'm president of the Neshoba North Neighborhood Association. In the meeting of this board in January, it was proposed by Alderman Gibson and Mayor Palazzolo that the smart growth overlay of the property known as the Owens Triangle be lifted and the property be made to revert back to single-family residential. Mayor Palazzolo further directed staff to begin that process. My neighborhood association has asked me to remind the board of this proposal and to advise that the consensus of our neighbors is that they are desirous that this proceed as quickly as possible. We are aware that there are several different groups with different interests in this parcel of land. Nevertheless, we regard the proposal by Alderman Gibson and Mayor Palazzolo as being in good faith, and we expect the measure to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lossing. We appreciate your comments this evening, and we only had one person come forward for citizens to be heard, so that concludes that item on the agenda this evening. That takes us to item, yeah.
We may have one more. I think we'd like to be able to speak.
Please bring that forward, yeah. You can submit it to the clerk and then just read or just state your name and address with zip code for the public record. Good.
My name is Michael Zerkammer. Address is 2118 100 Oaks Cove in Germantown, of course, 38139.
Go ahead.
Okay. I raised an issue back in 2014 about Shelby County Schools and with Mayor Goldsworthy, and this basically has to do with a problem along the chain link fence and a dead tree. Over the past 4 years, nothing has happened to that dead tree, which is still standing. It is in a position where it could hurt children if it fell over. It could end up clobbering my house. It could hit my cars. And I can't find anybody who takes care of it. Now, I have found in the city ordinance who's responsible for it, but getting anybody to do it. So that's a challenge I'd like to be able to see, get some resolution on it, because I'm sure nobody wants to see a kid flattened by a tree. Second item is the chain link fence that I mentioned earlier. There's approximately 1,900 square feet, which is the city's property now, which they're not maintaining. And in fact, in the 30 years I've been there, nobody wants to maintain that. I've asked the city who can take care of it, and there's confusion. Who's responsible for taking care of that part of the land? So this is something that needs to get resolved. I just don't have the energy to keep maintaining properties for city. And I appreciate that assistance. The other is that Farmington Elementary and the county schools have bamboo which incurred in their property. Over the period of time, it has successfully gotten worse and has spread into my property. Nobody seems to want to take ownership of it. Your mayor and I have had a conversation on this. I've had a conversation with several other people, and it appears that everybody just wishes it would go away. The problem is that bamboo doesn't go away. I have provided the aldermen with information I have about the complexities of bamboo and the complexities of removing that bamboo. And little interesting adjects about the complexity of bamboo and how to handle with it. Would like to see what we can get done about that. I have suggested that there is a potential source of that bamboo. I have not gotten any reception on that. I have been told that I was probably the person who caused the problem. I would love to see somebody make that legal case, because you can't. I don't like bamboo. I've never bought bamboo. I've never planted bamboo. And yet, I'm the owner of it. For the city to expect me to clean up something that somebody else caused, which came onto school property, which is now owned by the city, of which the city did not push the county to push back on and remove it, seems a little unreasonable. And on top of that, there's also the concern that people sometimes have allergic reactions to bamboo. My wife was one of those people. And I don't know how many kids may have that problem if they come in contact with it, but it is on their north side of the chain link fence. So hopefully we can get this resolved. I hope we didn't have to come to this point, but this may be the only way we can get some action going. With that, I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zerkhammer. Was there anyone else that filled out a sheet and was able to bring it to the clerk? That concludes citizens to be heard for this evening. That brings us to the consent agenda. Consent agenda was thoroughly reviewed in executive session. I'll go through it very quickly. Item 9A, agreement facility rental for Germantown swim team. Item 9B, appointment of assistant city prosecutor. Item 9C, construction contract, sidewalk installation at Wolf River Boulevard. Item 9D, lease agreement, Germantown Community Theater. Item 9E, purchase annual computer upgrades. Item F, purchase portable radio repeater. Item G, purchase firefighter turnout gear. Item H, professional services, supplement number 1, GPAC Grove. Item I, wireless transmission facility modification, Verizon equipment upgrade at 7624 Poplar Pike at the Water Tower Complex. And finally, item J, wireless transmission facility modification, Verizon equipment upgrade at 8151 Poplar Avenue, Our Lady of Perpetual Health Catholic Church. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented to the public?
Move to approve.
Second. It's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Consent agenda is approved as presented. Brings us to item 10 on the agenda, right-of-way acquisition, Track 13, Germantown Road, Wolf River Boulevard, intersection improvement project. Mr. Gwaltney.
Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this agenda item is to consider approval of a right-of-way acquisition agreement with Max Construction Stores in the amount of $163,611 for the purchase of real estate and easements related to the Germantown Road, Wolf River Boulevard Intersection Improvements Project and disbursement of the purchase price to the seller. This particular tract is at the southwest corner of the intersection and is commonly known as the Circle K BP store. The city's appraiser valued the property to be acquired and the easements at $163,611. The appraisal was reviewed and approved by TDOT, and we subsequently received the go-ahead to make the offer to the owner. The city's negotiator, Mr. Andy Miller, made that offer to the owners, and they accepted. Staff respectfully requests approval of the purchase, which is 100% reimbursable by state and federal funds, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Gwaltney. Is there a motion to approve the right-of-way acquisition of real estate from Max Convenience Store, LLC, for the total lump sum amount of $163,611 for a portion of Tract 13 and authorize the disbursement of the purchase price to the seller?
Move to approve. And second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion? Please call the roll.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barziza?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
No.
Motion carries. Brings us to item number 11 on the agenda, ordinance 2018-5, rezoning of the Reeves Schaefer property, 3258 Forest Hill Irene Road and 9190 Winding Oak Way from C1, Commercial 1, Neighborhood Commercial, and RE Residential Estate to R Residential Zoning, second reading and public hearing. Mr. Ross.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. As you mentioned, this is to approve on second reading the rezoning of the Reeves Schaefer property that consists of a small portion of C1 neighborhood commercial and a larger portion of residential estate RE1, and schedule the third reading for March 26th. This is the area that we're discussing tonight. It is just north of the new school site. The area in particular to be rezoned is just this area here outlined in red. The remaining portion is a already zoned residential, and then the colors don't exactly pick up, but just to the south and west of the R in the middle of the map, there are two really thin slivers of the C1 that would have to be rezoned as part of this. Just a little background on this property. The Oak subdivision was recorded in unincorporated Shelby County in 1987. However, only one house was built. That's the house at 9190 Winding Oak Way, and the rest of the property remained vacant. The city annexed the entire area into the city of Germantown as RE1 in 2000. In 2006, a portion of the property was rezoned to R. That's the portion, this area. This area here was rezoned R in 2006 as part of a development called Weldon Woods subdivision. The rest of it was to remain RE1, and there was also the portion zoned to the neighborhood commercial where the Millennium Furniture Building is now. As part of the Weldon Woods subdivision that was approved by Planning Commission in 2006, there were 33 lots proposed, 11 of them within the R-zoned area, and 22 within the residential estate 1 acre. This was approved by the BMA as Contract 474 on May 22nd, 2006. However, this subdivision was never developed, never recorded, and the property has remained vacant since. So the proposal in front of you tonight on second reading is for 32.14 acres that consist, as mentioned before, slivers of C1 neighborhood commercial, and the majority of which is residential estate 1 acre lots. The entire property that Mr. Duke and his partners are part of is 41.78 acres, with 6.8 acres that are already zoned residential. There will be a portion, the 2.8 acre portion on which the house at 9190 Winding Oak Way is located, that would remain in the residential estate 1 acre lot zoning. Under the ordinance, the zoning code, 2366 permits zoning changes such as when there's been a change in the neighborhood. The justification of the rezoning shall conform to one or more of the 4 criteria established by Tennessee courts. And in this application, the applicant provided the following justification, and that is the change in the neighborhood with the new school site to the south and the city's widening of Forest Hill Irene Road to a 4-lane with a divided median. As the applicant has demonstrated in their application and justification, the market has not dictated a strong desire for numerous residential estate 1 acre lots. The applicant did provide a conceptual site plan that conforms with the residential zoning. The R zoning is 15,000 square foot lot, so essentially 3 lots to the acre. The applicant showed the setback and the other information required. At this point, we would request that the board approve on second reading the rezoning of this area and move on to third reading. As part of Germantown Forward 2030, this project does justify the strategic objective within land use and transportation, objective number 4, that the city experiences positive trends in the assessed value of residential areas. Just to add to a little bit more of the background, this was the proposed but never recorded or built subdivision for Weldon Woods. You can see the existing house at 9190 that is still being left within the RE1 zoning district as part of Mr. Duke's proposal. As mentioned before, Mr. Duke is here tonight and would like to give a brief presentation, and staff is available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Would the applicant like to come forward and make a presentation?
I sure
Please
would.
state your name and address for the record, even though we have it in the file.
I'm John Duke. My address is 985 Reddick Cove in Memphis, Tennessee. I appreciate it. I'm going to start with just a little 2-minute video just to give a little history of my relationship with the city. You can bear with me on that.
What makes a successful and dynamic community? Germantown, Tennessee has proven it's the marriage of schools and their surrounding neighborhoods. Today, over 5,900 students attend 5 schools nestled in Germantown neighborhoods where kids can walk and bike to school with safety and confidence. Since 1977, John Duke has been building and developing Germantown neighborhoods. Neighborhoods like Kimbrough Woods. 41 years of building homes has generated close to $1.5 million in tax revenue for the city of Germantown. It is nearly impossible to drive down a street in this city without seeing a neighborhood touched by John Duke homes. With over 500 homes built here, John's goal is not just to build subdivisions, but to create smaller communities within this great city. With great attention to detail and design, sometimes you don't even realize a neighborhood is tucked away there. John Duke always has Germantown's best interest at heart.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. I guess the point of that, I was trying to say that I have a long history with this city and this community. I started building here in 1977 in Kimbrough Woods. I've been building here ever since. I've got a long history of being able to start a project and complete it. I've never had one that's gone under in the city of Germantown, made it through the hard times, and wanted to start off saying that in the last 8 years, I've created 208 homes and lots in Germantown. The land for Wilder during that same period, or actually longer, for 11 years, has been for sale. I don't make the market, I just read the market. And I can tell you that that is telling you that estate lots are not popular. 3 developers went broke on Forest Hill Irene Road alone trying to do estate lots. And the addition of the school has not made estate lots more desirable there, because it's ruined the kind of rural feel that you have usually that people with estate lots are looking for. You know, they're looking for long, narrow streets, you know, with no curb and gutter. They're looking for not commercial buildings to the north like I have. If you come in here, well, I jumped one, two. Right here, this has the site, you know, the school. I didn't create the school. I'm just reacting to the school. The school, you know, the leaders of this city decided to put the school there. And so that has changed the nature of that neighborhood. It has become a neighborhood that doesn't say it wants to be estate zoning. It's got commercial to the north. It has a 5-lane road being created to its west, which is removing the rural feel of the neighborhood. I think this is a logical step from commercial to residential to a school to estate back to residential down there. It's residential below, so and then it goes from residential, jumps down here to commercial again. So it's kind of a logical progression of mine is totally self-contained, and it backs up only to residential on one side. And there's 4 lots there that will be adjacent to my property. You have a letter from 2 of the lot owners, which happens to be one guy, Ken Sled, that says he's in support of my application. Mr. Mullis's son said he wasn't opposed to it. And so that just leaves me with the school on one side, the road on the other, and commercial and railroad track to the north. So the fact that this school is going in, you know, residential lots don't really, it doesn't have that urban, that rural feel with, there's going to be school buildings here, and now the administrative building is going to be there as well. And the fact that, you know, people are afraid of school ball field lights and school traffic, I think this is saying that it wants to be residential. We already have residential on about 1/4 of it right here, and some small commercial zoning already that'll be actually a down zoning. My site here will not go into any other neighborhoods. It's totally self-contained, which I think is a big deal, because I'm not going to be putting traffic into any estate lot zone, you know, into the estate lots there. It'll totally cut that off from ever going east. I'm going to have lots all across that back there. So we'll have a totally self-contained subdivision that I plan on heavily landscaping it like this. This is the enclave, and I also did Laurel Oaks over on Germantown Parkway, If you look at both of them, you can't hardly even see the houses behind the landscape. And of course, this is winter landscaping, so there's no color, but it would look a lot, better in the summer when the leaves are on the trees. But it just gives you an idea that you'd have to actually drive in to the subdivision to see the houses. So I'm totally cut off by the school from the estate lots that are to my south. All right, this is the biggest reason that I believe this is calling for R zoning. In the long history of Germantown, every board of mayor and aldermen has seen the vision to have R1, R2 lots surrounding the school. And I'm going to show you why that vision has been put in place. All right, here's first one, Farmington Elementary. That's all R there. That's all R1, R2 around it, around Farmington Elementary. Around Dogwood Elementary, it's all R and R1. Going down to Farmington Elementary, it's R1 and just a little sliver of R, and R2 over there as well over there. So no estate lots. We go to Houston Middle, it's all R around it. Houston High School, it's all R around it. Drop down to Riverdale Elementary, it's R1 and all R around it. And the reason for that, the reason that every board before you has voted for R zoning around a school is children walking to school. Germantown is known for its neighborhood schools. Germantown is at capacity. That's why because neighborhood schools work. People want to live where they can walk to school. This is a rural cross-section. This is Forest Brook with the state zoning. In estate zoning, sidewalks are not required. In state zoning, sidewalks are not required, which is the main thing, but also curb and gutters not required. And so you're going to put kids in the street walking to school with the state zoning. Not a good idea. Next thing, this is the street right next to Dogwood Elementary at night. Street lights are in R zoning. Street lights are required in R, R1, R2. They are not required in estate zoning. This, once again, is a rural, same spot. I took a picture the next night. That's what it looks like at night with no street lights. This creates a tremendous hazard for children walking to school. That's why we want a neighborhood that can create a safe environment for our children to walk to school. We don't want to put them in the street. We don't want to put them in a neighborhood with no street lights. And that's what happens with the state zoning. That's what you have just south of the school right now. Okay, I wanted to say that the people that are mostly affected by this are the Schaefers. They're in the house that, they didn't know the school was coming there, and they built this beautiful home. And they have joined in with me saying that this is their best option to recover their investment in their home. They have entered into this agreement with me to support this development. So they're the ones that are most affected by it. All right, I just want to really kind of end just saying that the fact that the neighborhood school is the most important thing, but I think the state lots are not going to happen if this doesn't get passed anyway. I mean, it's been there for 11 years. It's not as desirable now that the school's there, ball field lights. I don't make the market. The market tells you what it is. This land's been for sale for 11 years before the school came aboard. So I'm trying to find my tax slide here. Somehow or another, I don't know where it is. But the fact is that this development will generate $275,000 to $300,000 a year in tax revenue for the city of Germantown. Now, it's not all about money, but it is a little bit, because they just had an article at Collierville. They're talking about a proposed tax increase because of the hall tax loss of revenue. Hall tax is going away. Revenue from that is decreasing. And so this would be another way of increasing the revenue to this city, $275,000 to $300,000 a year. So in the end, I said, it's time to put this land to work. It's been there, you know, for a long time, not doing anything, not generating any revenue. You know, the school is there. It's coming. So let's create what every board of mayor and alderman has had a vision for in the past, a neighborhood filled with light, a sense of community, safety, and parks. This development will fulfill this vision, and it has been established that it works because the schools here are overcrowded. I just had a friend that got denied 3 of his children from transferring in here because they said the city schools are full. His kids had already been going to school here, and so it's showing that it works. People love Germantown schools. It's fantastic for me because I can sell every house in a Germantown school because everybody wants to live here. So let's go ahead, and I ask for your support in rezoning this vision that has been passed down to this board by the boards before it. Let's create a neighborhood school and keep Germantown what it's known for. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Duke. Is there, and we'll open a public hearing in a moment, but let's get a motion on the table. Is there a motion to approve on second reading ordinance 2018-5, the rezoning of the Reeves-Schaefer property at 3258 Forest Hill Irene Road and 9190 Winding Oak Way from C1 Neighborhood Commercial and RE1 Residential Estate to R Residential Zoning?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
So motion and a second. I'll now open a public hearing on this particular rezoning issue. Anyone who would like to come forward, similar to the rules of engagement with citizens to be heard, you'll have 3 minutes. And please keep those guidelines in play when you're making your comments to the board and to the community. Since you don't have a sheet, if you could state your name and address with zip code for the record for our clerk. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Brian Curry. I live at 9321 Hollow Creek Cove, 38138. First off, thank you for the opportunity to speak to the board. It's a good civics lesson for my children that are in attendance here tonight. I think we all agree that the stated goal of having a neighborhood school is what we're after. I think, or a neighborhood that kids can walk to school. I firmly believe that's a great goal. I think that's what we're going for here. I think we just disagree on how we're going to get there. Currently tonight, you are voting on our zoning, but that's not the real plan. And I know you're voting on what's in front of you, but the real plan is going to be a PUD that's going to be coming in front of you after this goes through the third reading. The slide that he showed you of the conceptual plan is not the plan that is going to be in front of you at all. The plan that's going to be in front of you, the last map that I saw that was that we have, that the Planning Commission has, that was in the Memphis Daily News, is a proposal for 117 lots in this area, not the 66 that are that we saw there. If we had the 66, we'd be clapping our hands and saying, let's go with it. We did meet with Mr. Duke. I do credit him for coming and meeting with us as a neighborhood. What we heard from him, we did ask for larger lots. I know I specifically referenced Oakley, and I said, you know, can we have lots the size of Oakley, 15,000 square feet? And his response was, well, he can't make those numbers work. And that's a little troubling to me because I think as a city, we have to say, here's what we're going to lay out for this area, here's our expectation, and then have the developers work with that, not having a developer come to the city and say, here's what we need to do to make this work. So I think we have a little bit of a backwards thinking here. I submitted a sheet to you, also sent it to you an email with some numbers. Now, I will say that my vision, as you see, is not good. So I was counting squares and polygons on the neighborhood map of trying to count lots. So I did the best I could there. So we'll say those are approximate numbers. For the enclave, and that includes Lansdowne, Enclave, and Enclave Estates. There were roughly 300 lots. Now, I don't know if that equates to the number of homes, but there were 300 squares roughly in that area. And per the GMSD, there were 41 students that lived in that area. Grove Park, again, approximate, but 250 was about what I came up with. There were 88 students that lived in that area. And the prices overall are pretty comparable between Enclave and Grove Park. Some of the larger homes in Enclave Estates are higher priced, but generally the smaller lot homes in Enclave compare very favorably to Grove Park. The other area I looked at, just because I wanted to see kind of an outlier that wasn't adjacent to a school at all, would be the Bedford Plantation and Devonshire area, and they have about 250 lots in that area, and there were 54 children enrolled in GMSD. In dialogue with Alderman Yonda and Vice Mayor Gibson, you know, Enclave has kids and it's a popular area, but they're not enrolled in GMSD. So if we're going to do this, you know, what's the point? I see Grove Park being maybe the model that's the most successful here, where people can buy into the neighborhood, they can have a trampoline, they can have a swimming pool. In the proposal that's going to be coming in front of you for the PUD,
you have 30 seconds.
Okay, only a handful of lots are 15,000 square feet. There were over 50 lots in that proposal that didn't have a yard at all. So I think if we're going to do this, we're going to have the newest and the best school in the state. It's going to be the crown jewel of our system. Let's have a neighborhood that's worthy of that and actually is somewhere where families want to live, because looking at the numbers as they are, I'm not seeing the dents being better as far as trying to get families into the neighborhood.
Thank you, Mr. Curry.
Thank you.
Please hold your applause. Let's have all the speakers come forward. Anyone else who'd like to speak on this particular item? Please come forward and state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes once you begin.
Kevin Speed at 9181 Forest Downs Road in Germantown. And how are you? Good to see you. Reiterating what Brian had to say, we're not anti-development. We're just anti-PUD. We'd like to get what we were told we were going to get. I mean, you know, we've stepped ourselves down from rural to 2 acre to 1 acre to R to what now appears to be a PUD that'll be zoning that allows too much density. And, you know, I know that smart growth calls for density and apartments, but our area's been hit double hard out there with apartments proposed and the denser subdivisions in an area that was typically never that in the history of Germantown, and previous administrations assured us that would never happen. Well, we've moved on from there. But, you know, the density doesn't allow the saving the trees, the aesthetics, and you know, if you look at the smart growth plans, that's part of some of the bullet points in saving the environment, protecting the environmental integrity of the land. And it just doesn't feel right to see this slash and burn, this clear cut of these 350-year-old oak trees out there that would make beautiful areas for a beautiful neighborhood if the lots could be a little larger. And I wanted to point out, you know, we all get this little magazine in Germantown. You probably saw it. It's a wonderful little magazine about Germantown. And the picture inside is a picture of a beautiful home. That's Dick Like's house on Poplar Pike right down the street, big oak trees. In this it reads, the environmental efforts Germantown makes are not overlooked. A tree protection ordinance stipulates that property developers must save as many trees as possible and replace those that are cut down during construction and replaced. So this concern for the preservation and natural beauty qualifies Germantown as an official Tree City USA. Well, how can we do that with these dense lots where these houses are 5-foot setbacks? I mean, they're so close that the Goodwin Farms is talking about having to put sprinkler systems in them just so that it satisfy the fire department. So anyway, we would like to see if we have to agree with something to step down to R from R1, that it remain R, that we get 15,000 square foot minimums, and we have places where kids can throw balls, ride bikes, walk their dogs, and grow up like a lot of us did in Germantown. And we'd just like to see that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speed. Anyone else would like to come forward and speak at this time? Please come forward and state your name and address and zip code for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Brandon Welford, and I live at 3366 Hollow Creek Road, 38138. My neighborhood is adjacent to the proposed development between the new elementary school and the railroad tracks. I sent a letter to each of you before the last Board of Mayor and Aldermen's meeting on February 12th when this project was last discussed. I would like to summarize a few of the comments from that letter and add some additional comments. First, I'm in favor of this site being developed with the existing zoning of 1 house per acre. A development with 1 house per acre is consistent with the rest of the neighborhood along Forest Hill Irene and would be a good neighborhood next to the new school. Over the last 10 years, quite a few homes have been built on the 1 acre lots in Forestwood and St. James Place. There was a comment made that those properties were in bankruptcy. Well, so was the Enclave. Go ask Ben and Nick Clark. It's my understanding they went in bankruptcy, and then that development was also bought out and is further developed, just like these other sites have been. There is demand for 1 acre lots, and it is attractive for families to have options for this size lot when most of the other properties in Germantown are on smaller lots. And when we moved to Germantown in 2004, we looked for a lot that had at least 1 acre of land, and this area was one of the few places in the area that had homes with larger lots. Frankly, we like the fact that we don't have street lights and we can see the stars at night. Where else can you see that in Germantown? So anyway, please maintain the integrity of this area with larger lots. Some have suggested that this area has changed, and the change has opened the door for a more dense development. If you look along this section of Forest Hill Irene, there is no evidence of change. The presence of the school does not dictate the need for a dense development. In my career, I've worked for developers, including a company that built over 400 homes per year. I've stood in similar meetings in front of elected officials and requested changes in zoning. In my 36 years of experience, I have never seen an environment where the voices of the neighbors and neighborhoods are being minimized in favor of developers who do not live in Germantown and will not have to live with the consequences of the dense developments being proposed. My neighbors and I are the current taxpayers and voters, but it seems like those people who do not pay taxes or vote in Germantown have a greater voice in the decisions being made. In last month's comments, it seemed like Mr. Duke stated the proposed development would not be like the Enclave, which is a 0 lot line development. I have seen the proposed plans, and including the one published in the Daily News in November 2017. This is a dense development. The title is Developers Eyeing 117 Lot Subdivision Near New Elementary School in Germantown. Just to be clear, it would be 3.6 houses per acre, many of which are 6,000 to 10,000 square foot lots. That's totally out of character for this area of Germantown. So I would just like to, as I'm running out of time, ask that all the people who may not be speaking tonight at least stand up and let everybody know that they're not in favor of the dense development that's being proposed. So if you please. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Welcome. Who would like to speak next? You would like to come forward and speak to the board? Please state your name and address, zip code for the record. You'll have 3 minutes, sir.
Hello, my name's Alan Taylor. My address is 3349 Forest Hill Irene Road, 38138. Thank you, board, for listening to me. I just have a couple of short comments after hearing all of this. I actually live directly across the street from the proposed building site. We moved there in October, my wife and I did, as well as our 2 young children who we actually moved to a little over an acre lot for our children. The mention was not many people with children would want to move there. Well, I'm an example of those that did. We liked the forested area, which we have just watched over the last several weeks be just shredded, cut down directly across from our street. The lake has been drained. That's there, albeit from what I hear, temporary, although from everything I see, I'm just not sure how that's going to change. It has actually gone through my yard. My yard is contains one of the main drainage sites of that area, which we've already started to see significant amounts of erosion just from draining the lake all through. Trees will fall soon, my trees on my land. So, you know, this is all something that affects everything. The street will be widened, which we knew about moving in, and that was okay, and we were okay with this school. But now there will be traffic that is increased, especially since we are directly across that. We were fine with the school, we understand that, but this is just going to, you know, further increase things. You can watch and see these people whose land, who have been there for quite a while, and like the larger lots are being chipped away at because of the road. You know, I was aware of it, but some of these people were not aware of this. Just a few things to kind of keep in mind. There are plenty of people in my neighborhood actually who are 1 acre or more lots who have children. Not everyone goes to private schools. Many of them do actually go to public schools and probably would consider going across the street. I think that's basically everything I had to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Anyone else who'd like to come forward and speak to the board, please come forward and state your name and address and zip code for the record.
Mike Bruns, 9279 Forest Downs, Germantown 38138. I wasn't going to come up and speak, but I did want to make a couple points. Excuse my voice. One point was, and Mr. Duke, I don't know you. Got a great reputation. But I do get a little bit nervous when someone that puts something up on a screen to make us all feel good is not exactly what's going to happen if it goes down that path. That scares me a little tad. Secondly, I think it's politically dangerous, and dangerous for this community, for Mr. Duke's balance sheet to drive our decisions. It shouldn't be he can't make these numbers work. If all of the plots on that property were 1 acre, I think all of us would be high-fiving in this room. But he can't make that work. And that's no offense to Mr. Duke. So all of a sudden we find ourselves trying to make decisions that allow his numbers to work. And all of the numbers and the plots and how many there are and where they'll be allows for him to make a profit. And I'm all about making profits. But the fact of the matter is, it's not good for this body to let his decisions on his balance sheet drive your decisions. It has to be the other way around. That's all I want to say.
Anyone else who'd like to come forward and speak to the board? Please come forward and state your name and address with zip code for the record, please.
I'm Radwan Haiko, and I live on 9065 Bridge Forest Drive. 9065 Bridge Forest Drive. Thank you. I was late coming in, but so all I want to say two points. Maybe they were not mentioned. We did not get a notice about this rezoning, and we live on the same street, and we are going to be as affected as anybody else. So that may reflect not too many people are here because they did not receive a notice. The second thing is, this is spring break, and a lot of people may not have attended this meeting because of it, because the opposition is more than what you see here. That's all I wanted to say.
Anyone else who would like to come forward and speak to the board, please? Is there anyone else who would like to come forward and speak to the board on this particular matter? Ms. Parker, are you coming forward to speak or to sit down? Come forward, please, and state your name and address for the record.
Lisa Parker, 1761 Leeds Cove, 38139. As a member of the Germantown Municipal School Board, the school site committee chose this site as it was narrowed from for 4 sites. And this one came to the top, and there was something missing, and that was a neighborhood. This development is what we at the board visioned. All of the elementary schools have very involved and close neighborhoods that enhance our schools. But safety is our #1 priority. We do want street lights. We do want sidewalks. We do want crossing guards. There's a long list of what we do want in regards to neighborhoods. As far as, you know, and I've sit here and heard the comments from the people that live close to the neighborhood, and I have sat in your chairs and I have pondered as to what would be the right decision to make, and I'm in a quandary. I just hope you make the best decision for our children. I can't say I'm sorry that we have the best schools across the state of Tennessee. I can't say that I'm sorry we're busting at the seams to have to build another one. I can't say that I'm sorry we have the best REACH program across the state. I can't say that we have the best athletics, the best teachers standing up in each one of our classrooms, but this is what it's all about. And now, you know, we need to have neighborhoods next to this school. And I don't know what's right. I don't think I've ever rezoned commercial back to residential, but that's a good problem to have. But I thank you for letting me speak in favor of this development, and I hope you do the best thing for the children of Germantown. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. Is there anyone else? Anyone else who would like to come forward and speak to the board, please? Please come forward, state your name, address, and zip code for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Suzanne Heichel, and I live at 9065 Bridge Forest Drive, 38138. I just want, in answer, I just want to say, we have a neighborhood. We are a neighborhood. We know each other. We moved to Germantown because Germantown takes care of its neighborhoods. And we moved to that area because we liked the trees and the open space, and we have no objection whatsoever to the school. We need schools in Germantown, and I'm hoping that this one will be exemplary. What we do not want is chock-a-block houses, one on top of the other. The traffic will increase. It will be not good for our neighborhood, and there will be people moving in and out all the time. I hope that you will respect that we are a neighborhood and that we would like Germantown to honor this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Heichel. Anyone else like to come forward? Anyone else like to come forward and speak on this particular rezoning issue?
Do I get to respond?
No.
No.
Anyone else would like to come forward and speak? See no one come forward, the public hearing portion is now closed, and we return to the motion that is at hand. Any questions for staff? Anyone like the floor from the board? Alderman Massey.
Actually, you do. It's for me. Mr. Ross mentioned that you have partners. I'm assuming that's more than one partner, and I'm just curious who those partners are going to be in the development.
Mr. Massey, you asked me this at the last board meeting.
Yes,
I'll
sir,
be glad
I
to repeat it. It's Mr. Henry Waddell.
Okay.
And that's the only partner that I have.
Well, that's the reason. I'll tell you why I wanted some clarification. One, Mr. Ross mentioned tonight that there were partners plural, okay?
I understand that.
So I just wanted some clarification. Alderman Yonda also sent an email to a citizen who said that there were multiple partners that were going to develop this piece of property.
It's not correct.
He said they were the developers of the enclave. Some of those members are also members of our commissions. And so I just wanted to know if any of those individuals were going to be partners in this development.
Henry Waddell and John Duke are the only two partners in this development, period.
But you
And
understand
there are
the
no
reason for my
members, what's that?
question. You understand the reason for my question, though?
No, I don't.
Are you yielding the floor, Alderman Massey?
I think Alderman Owens has a question.
Alderman Owens, you have the floor.
No question. Just, I guess, time for discussion yet, or?
We are in discussion.
Okay, thank
right
you.
now.
Yes. I'll make some comments if I may.
Sure, yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Are we going from questions to discussion? Are you going, is that what we're doing?
It's all the same.
Yeah.
It's always been that.
John, I don't have a question. You can sit down. Thanks. So I had the privilege of getting to spend some time with some of the folks who reside in this area, Mr. Curry, Mr. Speed, Mr. Bruns were kind enough to have me out, and we sat down around the kitchen table and discussed this. And then later, again, I went out and I met with Mr. Speed and Mr. Curry, and they were kind enough to drive me around the Forest Hill Heights area. And I call it Forest Hill Heights, south of Poplar, along Forest Hill Irene. And it was very helpful to me to understand their position that you just can't get in a 3-minute period when someone is standing up in front of the dais like that. And I hope with my conversations with them, with my conversations with anyone who I've discussed and since first reading, that I'd like to think, very transparent in what I believe is right for this piece of property. It is my opinion that this is a classic rezoning case. You have, we are charged with having to have a change in the neighborhood. And some might argue that a change has not yet occurred. However, with the selection, in my opinion, with the selection of the school site and the impending or upcoming road widening, that constitutes a change in the area. And look, we all knew that we were going to have significant development pressure that came with the Germantown Municipal School District, the award-winning district that we have. I think it is our responsibility to plan wisely and make sure that we have quality development that comes with that, because it's coming. It's going to come. Development is coming with the schools. And so one of the reasons, as I mentioned, the change in the area, and so like I mentioned, my opinion is that there has been such a change. I believe, and I've always said, that our zoning, 15,000 square foot lot, minimum lot size, is appropriate around schools, and I think that's dictated throughout our city, that we have that same type of development. I think having a neighborhood of single-family homes adjacent to school is appropriate. I would agree, I guess, with Mr. Duke that sidewalks and streetlights for children to play is a good thing. Although I may take exception, I believe that we could still require sidewalks and streetlights, and I'm looking to Mr. Ross in RE1, but I guess it's kind of a moot point. Tonight we're looking at a zoning case, and we've talked a little bit about, some folks have talked about the plan development, and I understand that through my conversations is that there is some concern that once our zoning is put in place, that we will have a bait and switch, or we will have a different development that comes in. And I think we've all looked at, or at least I have, and I know the residents have as well, the initial concept plan that was provided by Mr. Duke. And so where I think we get down to it, and I don't want to discuss this too much, but the concept plan illustrated small lots along the railroad and adjacent to the commercial property. It is my opinion that may be appropriate, and I think that's where the entire issue, at least for me, is tonight, is those lots. That's where the discussion point will come in. I've said all along, and I've told Mr. Duke this, and I'm stating publicly tonight, that the balance of that property needs to be our residential zoning. The only exception to that, which could be those small lots, and the size of those small lots against the railroad track is up for debate. I do think that some larger lots, and Mr. Duke has assured me that he will have some larger lots in the balance of that property. But again, we're not talking about that tonight. We can't even get to that point until we rezone to R, which is 15,000 square foot lot size, because a planned development is not allowed in the RE1 district. It's my belief that our zoning is or should not be considered dense development. It is the zoning that constitutes the majority, a great majority of our schools, of our city property. And I guess in closing, I'll say, I've never considered, and I think it would be illegal, and I maybe look to you, Mr. Ross, but I've never, ever considered a developer's profits or what he can do or what he can't do when I'm making my decision on a rezoning case. I've tried to measure it on the merits of the case, about the land uses that were adjacent to it, whether or not there's been a change in the area, and that's the reason that I've made my decision, and that's the way I'll be voting for it tonight.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
So, Alderman Owens, I get to say everything that you just said I completely agree with, and I appreciate your comments, especially about heartfelt from the citizens who heard, and again, I don't know where they heard Mr. Duke say that those numbers won't work for me. That doesn't play into our decision. I believe Mr. Duke knows that. The first time that I spoke with him was after the first reading. Never met him before, even though I've lived here almost all my life, and you certainly have been doing business here for many, many years. This is an important decision. We can't get to any future discussions without the zoning designation of R, and I do believe it's wholly appropriate. I know I said at the first reading, having grown up near Dogwood Elementary School, we were the second home in that neighborhood, and I saw families come in, some with children, some without, and so to say that we are a one-size-fit-all community, I think, I don't think that that is the case. I think that our neighborhoods are made up of many different types of families. I certainly, to Ms. Heichel's point, would never, I'm looking for you, I can't find you. I would never say that your community, your neighborhood is not a neighborhood, because again, having grown up right on the other end of Forest Hill, best friends there on Forest Hill and over in Crestwin Hills, I know that you are. I know that this, it's disingenuous to say that the school does not change the character of those homes in your neighborhood. That road that will be widened, it will forever be different from what it was 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And so I'm in favor of this, and I will be voting to support it.
Thank you. Alderman Yondo or Barziza? Alderman Yondo, I'm sorry. You'll have the close. Go ahead.
Yes. First of all, I want to say that I do live in Enclave Estates, and my response to a citizen had nothing to do with other partners involved in this. I don't know how it gets misinterpreted, but as you pass an email along, that's what happens, I guess, especially with certain aldermen. But at any rate, I like it going to R. I like the plan you're showing, but I keep hearing that there's something else coming, and I'm not interested in that tonight. I'll be interested in it if it does come. I'm interested in whether we need to make this an R, and that's what I'm planning on doing. I'm planning on voting for that. I like what I'm seeing in the plans that we have already, and I hope it stays that way or gets better. I anticipate that it will, based on the history that Mr. Duke has had in our community. And I can assure you, I have never made a decision based on profit to anyone in this community. I am concerned about tax dollars. I make decisions based on that in some cases when we're doing FAC. How much are we going to spend based on how many tax dollars we have, not how many I can squeeze out of somebody by having them redevelop something. I find that rather, I resent it, to tell you the truth. But at any rate, I am voting for this, but I'm voting for R. I'm not voting for the number of homes that are going to be there. Once that comes up, I'll worry about it then. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Barziza.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to put the cart before the horse in this matter, and I think it is important that we do, that we all do, that having heard that it's going to go to 117
potentially go to 117 PUD units is very disconcerting to me. It's very disconcerting to the neighbors. I think it would be counterproductive as far as the number of units and the number of students that would be adjacent to the school. We're already to beyond maximum as far as student population. Outside of a couple of folks that would like to maintain, and I'm sure there are others, would like to maintain residential on 1 acre lots, or I can't blame them. That's what old Germantown was back in my day growing up. We had horses everywhere. It's a totally different community. We have a community that's growing very rapidly, particularly when it comes to the schools. It concerns me in that, you know, do we have a strong or a really good long-range plan regarding the schools and in regards to the future and the growth and you know, we going back to, if I may, to the apartment issue or even this issue. We only have so many seats available. It's my understanding that even in the new middle school, a lab has been turned into a regular classroom. I have no problem with you, Mr. Duke. I know your brother very well, and if I could be assured that there would be 1,500 square foot lots, I would vote for you tonight. I would vote for this. Unless I have that assurance, I'm going to have to vote no.
Nobody's asked me what I'm planning on doing.
Well, that's not, this is a zoning issue tonight.
I know.
So, yeah, and please keep your comments.
Thank you.
You still have the floor? Did you? But actually, in closing, again, I'd like to say that it is not keeping with what is traditional in that area. I certainly understand it, but believe me, if there's a PUD that's in the offing, you're going to certainly hear a lot of negative from me. I promise you. Thank you. Thank you. Any other discussion or comments?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Alderman Massey.
I didn't make my comments earlier during the question session. Mr. Duke, I want to address something to you. One of the reasons I've asked some of these questions of you is that, and I'm not asking a question now, you don't have to get up. I'm sorry about that. But it's because some citizens have been uncomfortable about the way that the project was approved at the planning level. And so when I'm asking you questions, I'm just trying to get a comfort level with where we are today. So it's nothing against you. I have no problem with you. So that's where some of my questions are coming from, okay? Now I'll read my comments into the record. I supported developers' rights to build in accordance with the city's zoning ordinances. The Reeves property is currently zoned for large residential estate lots, which would result in low-density neighborhood, similar to other nearby neighborhoods. When Mr. Duke contacted the Reeves family about purchasing the property, he knew the property was zoned for residential estate lots. I contend the board should not now vote to change zoning ordinances that have existed for years simply because an individual developer, landowner, and the city can make more money by increasing the density. I would like to remind my colleagues that we recently voted to approve a moratorium on multifamily developments over concerns about density and overcrowding of our city and schools. So it is not reasonable for this same board to now vote to increase density for this project. Our schools are already overcrowded, and existing residents expect us to take action to help ensure the schools won't become even more overcrowded. Previous members of the city's Planning Commission and Board of Aldermen drafted plans and codified zoning ordinances, and residents relied on those plans and ordinances to preserve the existing character of their neighborhoods when they purchased or chose to remain in their homes. These laws should not be replaced with arbitrary decisions of individual government officials, as people are fallible and will instinctively help their friends and punish their enemies if given the opportunity. City officials, developers, and landowners have been collaborating to find a way to maximize the density and profits for the development of Forest Hill Heights and the surrounding properties since at least 2014. and they surely recognized that a new school would attract new residents for new homes and apartments. First, the mayor attempted to purchase the Crestwin Winchester site from Regency Homes for a new school site. There was a citizen uprising over the site choice, so it was scrapped, and the current site was moved just down the road to Forest Hill, Irene, next to the Reeves property.
Alderman Massey, we have a point of order. What is your point of order?
My point of order is, what is he talking about? We're talking about making this R1, or R, excuse me. I don't understand why we're going into insulting the alderman and the mayor, et cetera. I mean, I have a problem with the way he's doing this. I don't think it's proper. It doesn't have anything to do with this being R.
Your point of order is taken. Please try to be germane to the topic at hand. Please continue, Alderman Massey.
Mayor, I'm explaining why I'm voting no tonight.
I said continue, Alderman Massey.
Thank you, Mayor. Most residents welcome the decision to build a new school in the Forest Hill Heights area, but they never fathomed that the city officials would use the new school and smart growth as the enterprise to push through zone.
What is your point of order, Vice Mayor?
It needs to be germane. There does not need to be any innuendo in Mr. Massey's comments. We're here for discussion, to hear the comments, but it's not appropriate.
With all due respect, I'm explaining why I'm voting no. This is very germane to the topic at hand. And I should be allowed to finish without being interrupted by your supporters, Mayor.
Point of order can be, anyone can ask for a point of order or point of inquiry. So your point of order is to mean germane to this subject matter. Also, in Citizens to be Heard, we do talk about innuendo or rumor or assumptions or motivations. So please try to stay to the subject at hand. Please continue.
Mayor, with all due respect, everything I'm saying is supported by the evidence. I've just received 56,000 documents that I've been having to go through in preparation for this and other meetings. So once I get through with that and the next $56,000 document, 56,000 documents that they said they're going to drop on me, I'll come back with more evidence for you. So all of this is supported. Now,
okay,
I'll
well,
continue.
let's talk about the evidence. Where's the evidence?
What
evidence?
Alderman Yonda,
I'm sorry.
You have not asked for the floor or point of order, so please.
Well, to the citizens, if these folks will give me the opportunity, maybe 30, 40 minutes to present my evidence to you, I'll do it. Tell them to vote, to give me the time. I'll stand before you, and I'll present the evidence, guaranteed.
Continue your comments.
Now, please don't interrupt me again.
We'll do whatever the
Alderman
rules
Yonda.
of.
Yeah, it's point of order or point of inquiry. So continue, Alderman Massey.
Most residents welcome the decision to build a new school in the Forest Hill Heights area, but they never fathomed that city officials would use the school and smart growth as the enterprise to push through zoning changes that would have been very difficult, if not impossible, to make in Germantown otherwise.
Well, where's your evidence on that? Because now you're talking about our city staff and our planning commission. You know, that is
Mayor, with all due
hearsay.
respect, I didn't bring it with me tonight, but I'll be glad to do that in the future. And speaking of being out of order, you're supposed to be an unbiased chair, and you're not being unbiased.
I'm being perfectly biased or unbiased. Go ahead, Alderman
This
Owens.
doesn't pertain anything to smart growth. Alderman Massey, I wish you would just stick to the reasons that you're voting against the rezoning.
I'm getting to those reasons if you would let me finish.
Okay.
Continue, please.
I want the public to know that many months ago, I requested information relevant to the failure to acquire the 3Gs, the new school site, and the development of Forest Hill Heights. And despite an agreement with the mayor's office to produce the information, it has never been
Alderman
produced.
Massey, what is your point of order, Vice Mayor?
We are far afield. We need to stay germane to the topic. And unfortunately, my colleague is not willing to do that.
Mayor, I'm finishing up.
Please conclude.
The residents of Germantown deserve to know what's going on in their government, and we shouldn't have to constantly play a constant game of catch me if you can with city officials. In some cases, staff recognized that developers were requesting zoning changes with the knowledge that they might flip the land to other developers for a profit. They worked with developers to help them draft language to convince the Planning Commission and BMA members that zoning changes and/or warrants were reasonable. In some cases, city officials...
Point of order, I'm sorry.
What is your point of order?
Nothing to do with the topic at hand. We're talking about the rezoning of the Schaefer property, and you're inciting innuendos, Alderman Massey.
I'm sorry, this is not innuendo. I have the email that shows this.
It has zero to do, however, with the rezoning of the Schaefer property. That is my opinion.
If it was improperly rezoned, it has everything to do with the reason to vote no tonight.
I'd like to call the question.
The question has been called. Is there a second?
Yes.
Question has been called. Please call the roll.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza?
No.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
No.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
The residents of Germantown deserve...
Hold on for a moment, please. The motion fails. Please continue, and please cut down on the rhetoric and conclude.
The motion didn't fail.
It did fail.
You have to have a 2/3. So no, we did not. That did not pass.
In some cases, city officials who worked within the city to implement the smart code left the city to work with the developers who benefited from the new zoning. And then there are members of the board who work for companies that worked with the developers of some of the projects in Forest Hill Heights. For me, I'm concluding. For me, it just seems like the process was rigged for developers to get the most density and profit out of every acre of land in and around Forest Hill Heights. I think the city favored a handful of developers and landowners over the vast majority of families in the surrounding neighborhoods. I think it was wrong to change the zoning to allow for dense apartments, and I think it is wrong to change the zoning to increase the density on the Reeves property, especially after subjecting the existing residents to the density that they were already forced to accept when the board approved hundreds of new apartments in Forest Hill Heights. I stand with the residents who want to preserve the character of their neighborhoods, and I will vote no to more density.
Thank you. Anyone else like to have the floor? The question has been properly motioned and seconded. Please call the roll.
Alderman Barzizza?
No.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
No.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Absolutely.
Motion carries and moves to third and final reading. That brings us to the conclusion of our meeting this evening. We are adjourned. Thank you for being here.